Have you ever wondered what's in your food? Really in your food. Not just in the meats we eat, but in the fruits, vegetables, and grains we eat too. Every person who eats a balanced diet of fruits, vegetables, grains, dairy, and protein products potentially consumes approximately 32 different types of synthetic chemicals every day. There are chemicals in every type of food we eat today. Even foods defined by the U.S. Department of Agriculture as organic can contain multiple synthetic chemicals. Not only are these chemicals in our food, but they can also affect our planet. This presentation focuses on chemicals in our food and their impact on our environment. When looking at the chemicals that are in foods, we first have to examine the regulations put on by the USDA and the FDA that food production companies have to follow. The chemicals and pesticides used by food production companies are tested and approved for use by the Environmental Protection Agency. The EPA's second task is to monitor how much of the pesticide can be used and how much residue can be present in or on the foods. Consumers want safe food, but entrenched producer interests that become increasingly powerful throughout the course of the 20th century ultimately frame the way that food safety legislation was written or not written, and the way that food safety regulations were developed and enforced or not enforced. Without the proper regulations, a single pesticide can be intended for use and leave residue on the raw agriculture, and this can lead to the pesticide finding its way into processed food and animal products. After the pesticides and chemicals have been registered to use by the EPA, there are many different pathways in which they can contaminate animal products and vegetation. Vegetation can be contaminated by several pathways: uptake from soil, deposition of gases and particles from the atmosphere, deposition of resuspended soil particles, violization from the soil, and subsequent aerial deposition. Ingestion is the primary exposure route of pollutants to animals, with very little from the atmosphere. This can be from contaminated pasture or contaminated feed. This is important as direct soil ingestion was reported to be the most significant pathway for contaminated milk. Even with the FDA, the USDA, and the EPA regulating the pesticides and chemicals used in food production and crops, vegetation are still contaminated through the modern use of these practices. And since pesticides and chemicals are used on animals, some of these chemicals can transfer into our food and then be ingested by humans. An individual's diet will dictate the number of different chemicals he or she will consume on a daily basis. Whether an individual exhibits a low-fat diet or a high-fat diet, some of the pesticides exhibited in both diets are listed as carbaryl, chlorofluoromethyl, DDE, disphenyl ethyl hexate, phosphate, indosufrin sulfate, methylhelium, permethrin, and thiabenzidol. Even in a vegetarian diet, there was 27 different chemicals detected in the foods that they eat. No diet is free from synthetic chemicals or pesticide mixtures. If every type of food we eat has some type of synthetic chemical or pesticide, does the effects of the chemicals and pesticides have a danger on our health? Pesticides are the only toxic substance released intentionally into our environment to kill living things. This includes substances that kill weeds, insects, fungus, rodents, and others. In addition, pesticides can be found in the air we breathe, the food we eat, and the water we drink. Scientists from the University of Montana and Harvard University conducted a study that found that exposure to pesticide residues on vegetables and fruits may double a child's risk for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, a condition that can cause attention hyperactivity impulsivity in children. Pesticide mixtures are used everywhere on schools, parks, public lands, and agricultural fields. Pesticides have been linked to a wide range of human health hazards, ranging from short-term impacts such as headaches and nausea to chronic impacts like cancer, reproductive harm, and endocrine disruption. Some studies have even found chemicals in women's breast milk. Not only do these pesticides and chemicals have adverse effects on humans, but they have effects on the environment as well. The most obvious drawbacks are decreasing effectiveness, pest resistance, contaminated food, chemical dependency, animal die-off, and human illness. When chemicals that are designed to kill are introduced into delicate, balanced ecosystems, They can set damage in motion that reverberates through the food web for years. Pesticides threaten biodiversity and weaken the natural system upon which human survival depends. Honeybee populations are plummeting nationwide. Bee populations have dropped 30% per year since 2006. A growing body of evidence points toward pesticide exposure, even at so-called safe levels, as a key contributor to these and other problems for wildlife. Even male frogs exposed to atrazine become females. Its primary manufacturer is Cygneta. Cygneta calls it Atrix, but it's commonly known as atrazine. More than 75 million pounds of the herbicide are used on U.S. farms every year, making it the second most used pesticide in agriculture. And it contaminates water supplies throughout the Midwest at levels above those found to turn the male tadpoles into female frogs in the lab. Some pesticides seep through the soil into groundwater. Others are washed by rain into creeks, rivers, and lakes where they can poison fish and other aquatic organisms. Using synthetic chemicals, pesticides, and other chemicals on plants and animals has not only proven to be detrimental to our health, but it's killing our planet. The continued use of chemicals and pesticides will only be worse in the future. Some sustainability activists and scientists have already started working on greater solutions on how to decrease synthetic chemicals and pesticide use in our agricultural fields. One approach makes use of an extraordinarily precise and well-adapted system that can deliver a substance exactly where it's needed using living bees. Bees do not only help plants grow and reproduce through their work as pollinators, but also transport communities of microbes around with them too. It has led some scientists to wonder if bees can recruit and deliver beneficial fungi and protect plants, reduce the need for pesticides. Other methods of pesticides can be sprayed too. Bugs will never entirely stop eating at plants, even with the best pesticides. But farmers can stop bugs from eating plants by using safer materials like vegetable oil, dish soap, and rubbing alcohol to kill off current insects and prevent more from coming back. Then there are other techniques like flaming. Flaming takes care of two problems at once. By blowing carefully directed fire towards hordes of insects and weeds, the hot temperature destroys weed cells and insects, preventing any living insect from reinvading and finding a home in the same spot. In order to get the world's production of food all grown without pesticides, farmers would need resources to learn different techniques and growing processes. Some groups have already thought of this issue and are ahead of the game. The International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movement is a group that aims to unite farmers and workers toward worldwide sustainable agriculture. Synthetic chemicals and pesticides have already contaminated the world's agricultural fields, our bodies, water supply, and damaged natural environments and ecosystems. Continued use will only make the problem worse. Any solutions and technological advances in the agricultural world can not only decrease the use of synthetic chemicals and pesticides, but can also bring new advances to the agricultural world that will change it for the better.